Hey guys, it's Bronson. Today we're going to talk about the best investment you've probably never heard of. In fact, I would say that 95% of Americans have never heard of this investment, but it offers higher returns than the stock market, lower risk and volatility, an inflation hedge during times of inflation, and it has some amazing tax benefits. So what is this mystery investment that I'm talking about? Well, a lot of people, when they think of investing, they have all sorts of things that come to mind. You probably do as well. So are you ready for a drum roll? Drum roll, please. And it is your own ice cream stand. No, actually it's not. It's actually called multifamily syndication. Now, when you hear that word, or those words, multifamily syndication, you might just check out and say, well, I don't know, I don't really care what that is. And a lot of times what our mind does when we don't know, we've never had any experience with something before, or we don't know anybody who has done something before, we just kind of check it off. And this is what I did a number of years ago, but I encourage you to pay attention to this video because it can be absolutely life-changing for you. And so this is not a strategy that is an active strategy, that's one that you have to actively manage a stock portfolio or options trading or have single-family houses. This is one that truly is passive. And that's really my passion, is helping you to achieve financial freedom to where you dictate how you want to live your life and you have your money work for you in a very powerful way. And so I even created this show. You can check it out up here. It's the Mailbox Money Show. It talks about all different forms of passive investing, all different asset classes, and of all the asset classes that I've discovered, all the research that I've done, this one is by far the best, and I'm going to get into it in just a minute. And again, it really doesn't matter what you invest in. It doesn't matter what the asset class is. What matters is what it does for you. How does it perform? What are the risks? What are the tax benefits? All those things. When you look at the whole package together, I think you're going to see that multifamily syndication is absolutely incredible. There's really no investment like it. So we're going to do it in 3 easy steps. Go ahead and smash that like button, bring the fire on your end, and we're going to jump into it. All right, so this is step number 1, how multifamily syndication works. So the first thing is that you buy a large apartment building. Well, not really you don't actually buy a building, but you basically join a team that purchases a large apartment building. We have, this is called a GP-LP split. So typically what that means is a general partner versus a limited partner. So our group, when we operate different buildings and we buy them, we are the general partner. So we will go to investors and say, hey, we've got this great deal. We're looking to raise money for this deal. We have LPs or limited partners that come in, and they are not part of the operations team. They don't get the calls when the toilets are having issues, or when we're looking at the asset as a financial asset, trying to make it perform more efficiently. That's the role of the general partners. The general partners typically invest, but they also invest their time. They have experience that do it. So basically, we buy a large apartment, we structure an entity that purchases this. I'm just going to go kind of high level here. We can get more into that specifically later. But basically what we do is we really try to add value. So how the value of apartments, really what it depends on is how much income this particular property is producing. So what will happen is there's typically a lot of turnover in apartments. So you have a 100-unit apartment building, maybe each month, maybe 5 or 8 people will move out. And so when those people move out, what you do is you come in and you do renovations, typically spending $5,000 to $10,000 per unit. You put new floors in, you do some painting, you'll do some different things, and you'll increase the value, or you increase the rents as new folks move in. So you'll say, okay, now rents are going to go up $150 a month for this new renovated unit. And people will gladly pay it because they want to live in a nice place with nice floors, nice countertops, nice community. So they pay more money. So that basically is about adding value. When you increase rent, it dramatically increases the value of the property. So typically we hold these buildings for 3 to 6 years, and in that time the property appreciates just from the market appreciation. Also by doing what we call forced appreciation, where we come in and add this value, it actually increases the value of the property even more as well, and cash flow is given while the property is being held. And so we hold it for these 3 to 6 years. Now there's some incredible benefits, as I mentioned earlier, about investing into apartment buildings or into multifamily syndication. And again, this is all very passive. So if somebody invests, we have a lot of people that are professionals, they're doctors, they're dentists, they're lawyers, they're business owners, they do other things, but yet they're allowed to invest in this passively. The diligence really is on the front end, where you vet the team, you vet the deal, and then basically you receive the cash flow along the way, which is really awesome. So the first benefit I want to mention is that there are significantly higher returns in investing in multifamily syndication versus stocks or other investments. So very commonly, if you look at kind of a long-term trend, stocks typically yield about 6 to 8% per year. You may say, hey, hold on, Bronson, I'm getting like 20% per year and I'm just killing it in my stock portfolio. That's maybe very true, but if you don't count the down years are really what destroy your returns. So if you were able to just only do the up years, maybe you'd do much better, but that's the challenge. You also have fees involved that really are some things that aren't listed here, as well as you have taxes, especially if it's in a cash account. Multifamily, it's very common. We'll see 10 to 20% returns per year. And before you say, oh my gosh, that sounds like that must be really risky, that higher returns equal higher risk. And I'm going to show you in this case, it's not actually true. And if you're interested in just learning specifically about returns and how they work and how you can get higher returns, particularly for the long term, I did this video about 17xing your investment or retirement returns. You can check out that video up here. It's a cool video. Now, the other thing I want to look at is that multifamily syndication has a lower risk profile and lower volatility. And so my guy, Warren Buffett, he says, rule number one is don't lose money. And rule number two is don't forget about rule number one, right? So whatever you do, you just don't want to lose money. If you can prevent losing money, that's a huge, huge deal. So that's really important we look at this. So 2009, this was the worst point in the Great Recession. Stocks, real estate, everything was hit super hard. We look at single family. A lot of people think that real estate is real estate, right? Single family is the same as multifamily. Well, this shows it's very, very different. So in 2009, we have a single family default rate or a delinquency rate, meaning people are 60 days behind on their payments or they're in foreclosure, of 4% nationally. Now that's 1 in 25 houses. In 2009, the worst point in the recession. In some areas, it was much higher, but that's still pretty significant. Now, during that same period, large multifamily, meaning 60 units or more in one building, it was 0.4%. So that means 1 out of every 250 were in default or foreclosure, and it was 10 times less than this number. Well, why is that? Think about it. If people lose their houses, where do they go? They go to multifamily apartments, typically not the highest end, newest apartments, but the working class apartments. If people are, in times of challenging economic times, they go to apartments. Even in good times, everybody needs apartments. There's a really supply and demand issue right now where there's more and more people. Population is growing continually. We know we're going to need 4.6 million more apartment units by 2030. Construction costs go up, inflation's going up. These apartments are going to be more and more valuable over time, and so rents are going to continue to rise. Now, if you take a look at this chart, you can see rents over the last 50 years, adjusted for inflation, just continually kind of go flat or up and to the right. There's a long-term trend there that shows that the income from these properties, and that's again what the value is based on, is the income, which is rents, is really, really solid. Versus you can see stocks, you can see on this chart, we have up, we have down. This is similar. It said this is 50 to 100 years here of stocks. So you can just see the volatility that happens when you're investing in stocks. Now we're going to get into a couple more benefits here, and I think you're going to like it. All right, so this is step number 2 about the tax benefits of multifamily syndication, and they are substantial. That's why I gave a whole section to this, because it's really that important. Now, I actually did a whole video about the tax benefits. You can check it out up here. It talks basically about all the different ways this works in a more in-depth way. So a few kind of high levels here is that the first thing is depreciation. So when you own a house, maybe you own your own house, you get typically over 27 and a half years, you can write off the entire cost of the house. It gives you a substantial benefit on your taxes, you save money. It's the same thing with multifamily. But multifamily actually has something a little different where it allows you, it's called a cost segregation study. And so instead of deferring, there's a process into that. I'm not going to get fully into it here, but what allows you to do is basically bring all of those losses that are typically over 20 to 30 years, bring them all forward to year 1. So you get this huge passive tax loss. So how that looks is, well, if people typically that invest in a deal, $100,000 goes into a deal to invest, and then year 1, on paper, it shows a $60,000 to $80,000 passive loss. Now, it's not saying $60,000 to $80,000 was actually lost. It's just saying that on paper, there's this passive loss. So let's say over the next 5 years, let's say that now this property has $50,000 worth of cash flow as it's gone along before the property's sold. And what you can do is use those passive tax losses toward those gains. So it allows you to basically use the money for the next 5 years and not pay any taxes on it until the property's sold, which at that point there is something called a recapture, which you recapture the depreciation. Some people will pay taxes, or if you get into other deals, then you basically can continue to use these passive tax losses to just continually defer taxes into the future. So if you ever have a chance to defer taxes, reduce taxes, it is much, much, much better than the alternative. That's why things like retirement accounts can work amazing. There's just awesome accounts that can really help you to reduce your taxes. So multifamily syndication allows you to do this in cash accounts. Does not have to be a retirement account. Actually works better sometimes with cash accounts for this reason. And then allows you to reduce and defer taxes. So I wanted to get into about just some of my friends. I have some entrepreneur friends. I'm part of a group called EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization, and I live in California. So we pay very, very high taxes. The highest tax rate's over 50%. So I have a lot of friends that make a lot of money, but they pay really high taxes. And so maybe you can relate with that. Maybe you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you own your own business, you're doing something that puts you in a very high tax bracket. It's very difficult because you're just, no matter how much you make, you're kind of continually getting pulled down by paying higher taxes. Well, to me, the last several years, I've legally paid almost no taxes. And you say, well, how did you do that? Well, it's by using this strategy, by being a real estate professional, which I get into that video that I mentioned, where it talks about how people can pay less taxes or almost no taxes by doing real estate. Now, for most people, I wanted to say, and this is probably the case that you're in, is that you have these two buckets, right? You've got a bucket over here, which is regular income. So you've got your job, you're well paid, maybe you're a business owner, and you're gonna keep putting money over here, and it's gonna be taxed at whatever level it's taxed at. Now over here, this is the passive income bucket. So these are my two artistic buckets, but this bucket here is really amazing because if you can put money over here and you're getting those higher returns, 10, 20% returns, if you can get a 15% return per year, your money will double every 5 to 7 years, which is absolutely incredible, right? It continues to grow. It grows on a tax-free or tax-deferred basis at a much higher level. You continually grow this. So even if you're kind of limited here, if you can start putting money over here, it can really create financial freedom. And I've watched people do this. We've had doctors that make, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars per year, and they're able to put money into passive income. They're able to develop the confidence of what it looks like to invest passively in multifamily syndication and just see their wealth and their financial freedom actually grow to where they're not tied just to going to have to go to work their job. So we're going to talk next about the inflation hedge benefits of multifamily. All right, so this is step number 3. Multifamily is an incredible inflation hedge. What that means is the more money that's being printed, we're just printing money. I mean, it's crazy how much money is being printed. In fact, 40% of all the dollars in existence today were printed in the last 18 months, which is absolutely astounding if you think about it. I did this video that talks about how to make a fortune on inflation. And there are ways that you can profit from this. You can check out this video up here. I think you'll really enjoy that. And then, but just want to talk about what happens when you have inflation, right? The value of the dollars that you hold to go down. It penalizes savers. So if you just save and you have money in the bank, that is not going to serve you well with inflation. As inflation picks up, we don't know what inflation is. Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it higher? It's somewhere in that range. We don't know exactly what it is, but you're losing, it's like a negative investment every year. You're losing 5 to 10% of just the cash that you hold. You're losing that every year as far as the purchasing power. Now, when you own assets such as multifamily real estate, there's a hedge there, right? There's a protection that it doesn't affect you in the way that if you just were to hold cash, it does affect you. Why? Because it's a real asset. It's something that's real, and the more money they print, it means that people are going to still need places to live. What that's going to do is basically cause the price of rents to increase over time. So again, it puts that hedge in there so you are protected in the time of inflation. I want to get a little more in depth in detail, just talk about how this works and how you really use debt to basically increase your wealth and have a strategy to really combat inflation. So use debt typically for multifamily properties at 70-80% of the actual purchase price is with debt. So typically, let's say in this example, we have a $12 to $15 million property. We owe $10 million on it, which sounds like a lot of money. But again, tenants are paying the rents, and so they're paying for the mortgage, and there's money left over. But what happens over time is the value of this property is going to increase, right? Why? Because of inflation, because we're doing those value add strategies, which is different from REITs and other things. We're actually coming in, we're renovating units, which gives a big margin of safety where we're increasing the value by increasing the rents by making the units nicer. So the value of the property is increasing for multiple reasons, and then we're paying back the debt with future dollars. So what that means is we're getting long-term fixed debt, typically, could be, several years, could be 5, 10 years, whatever that amount is. We're basically getting long-term debt and we're paying it back with future dollars. So what that allows you to do is that the dollars in the future are going to be worth less. It allows you both with the increase in the value of the property as well as paying it back. It just means that you're basically making more money and you're paying back. It's basically a double positive, right? So your value goes up and the dollars that it takes to pay it back goes down. So it continually works well for you. And so what it effectively allows you to do is to short the dollar. And what that means when you say short something, it basically means that you believe that the value of something is going to go down and you want to profit on that. So when we say we want to short the value of the dollar, we're saying we're believing the dollar is going to go down. So how we bet on that, or how we basically get behind that, is we take on debt and we basically see that the value of those debts actually becomes less over time because the value of dollars becomes less over time. There's a guy who did this in 1920s Germany. They called him the inflation king. He was world renowned. He went out and took out a ton of debt, all different businesses, and he profited substantially and paid off the money in future debts when money, at least in Germany, was particularly worthless. You can check it out up here. He's called the inflation king, so you can check out that video. But I'm not saying that we're going to hyperinflate here in the US, but we are going to have a period of significant inflation, and it could get potentially worse. And so just anyway, being prepared is really important. So anyway, I hope for you the light bulb went on in some ways. You got some new ideas. Maybe this is all new information for you. You've thought, man, I didn't even know this was out there. And again, when you encounter ideas like that, I hope that you take a moment and just say, I really want to research this more. I want to, get more information. I want to learn from people that are doing this. And so I just want to say thank you for taking the time to educate yourself. That really is the best investment that you can do. I wrote this free report here that talks about all this stuff more in detail. You can check it out in the link below. It's called The Single Best Investing Strategy During and After a Pandemic. It's a free download. And then, if you made it this far, consider subscribing, being a part of this channel. We'll get you the newest content as soon as it's available. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. But again, thank you for taking the time. Just wanted to show you my appreciation for you taking the time today. We'll see you soon.